Hi guys, and welcome to Building a Nation Added Time, the analysis slash squad report episode where we just go through stats and stuff like that. So again, this is not an episode that you have to watch if you are just enjoying the series, that's fine. This is more for the sort of people that love the stats, basically, like I do. So again, yeah, not necessary part of this, it's not part of the canon, so to speak. So anyway, yeah, and if you do enjoy these, do drop a like on the video, that would be rather cool as well. But I decided to call them Added Time since it wasn't just analysis anymore, it was just sort of a general overview at the end of each season, like a recap. It's almost like what Big Brother's little brother used to be to Big Brother, basically, except without Russell Brand. So let's get into some stats, basically. The first thing we're going to take a look at this time, though, is the players themselves before we look at the league and anything else. We'll just take a look at who's kind of improved this year, who's looking really good and who isn't. So Václav Kadlec, what can you say about him other than that he's been spectacular for us this year? Best player on the team by quite some distance at times, frankly. Contributed a decent number of goals, and hopefully he will continue to do that. Certain stats going up, but he is 24, so you feel like he's kind of maxing out his potential at this point. He's got that PPM for place shots, which certainly helps, I think, when he gets in behind. Next up is the youngster, Kaan Karanen. He's very, very young, but he's improved a lot this year, and as you can see, 2 stars already, and he's got that potential to go even higher, the young Finn. Only made 5 appearances this year in the league, but he did score a game in the Cup, which was great. He takes the tempo, which I think could be very, very useful as a playmaker at a later date, and that's where he likes to play. He plays in that sort of Olsen-Poulsen type of role, and I'm pleased with him for that. Next up is Nikolai Kirk, who's been out on loan at Nordsjælland, interestingly, and, well, I don't really know how's he done this year. He's not been fantastic, but then he's playing in a team like that, and I think next year he will definitely be staying and getting some more game time in our team. But as you can see, he has improved, and that's the main thing. He's got no PPMs, but we might look to give him some once he's back with us and training. Jim Larson, of course, with his knee tendonitis, he has announced that he'll be retiring at the end of the season, so I don't even have to let him go, and that will free up nearly £5,000 worth of wage budget, which could come in handy ridiculously. But it is a shame to see a player retire at the age of 30. It really, really is. Awel Mabil, of course, went out on loan to Nordsjælland as well, and again, didn't really do a lot there. He only played 4 times in the league for us. He's played 8 times for them, scored twice. Decent enough player, 20 years old, Australian, of course, so I feel like, you know, there's definitely a place for him as a backup, but I don't know how much longer he'll be able to fulfill that place. He's got that cuts inside from the left wing, which would make him a perfect inside forward over on this left-hand side, that's for sure. Alexander Munksgaard is another youngster. Plays, wow, look at that. He's got so many different positions that he can play, and that for me is a reason to keep him alone. He's got that gets forward whenever possible as well, which is quite useful for an attacking-minded fullback, particularly on his right-hand side. He can sort of play where Römer does. So again, he's improving this year. Looks like he's certainly got a bit more way to go, though, which is nice. Filip Novak, I've really enjoyed his work this year. He's averaged really solid ratings of a 7.04. He does have some really poor games, though. At the same time, he's a little bit inconsistent for us. He's got that that long throw ability, which is superb. Obviously, it's only 14, but he's got the PPM to go with it, which is why we're so dangerous from those, and actually scored quite a few goals from them, I think, this year. Well, at least forcing situations where we can score from anyway. So again, decent player enough, 3.5 stars in this team, I'm liking. Christopher Olsen, I can't wait to get him back, frankly. He's still young. He's still got more potential to burn. He's got decent value as things stand at the moment, and a decent length contract, although we could hopefully get that a bit more. He's fairly ambitious, though. He's got that killer balls situation, comes deep to get the ball, dictates the tempo, and the dwells on the ball one is one that we might look to try and train him out of, to try and speed up his game a little bit, stop him getting caught in possession quite as much, because he was superb, and if we can get rid of that, he might be spectacular. Paul Onuachu, probably not going to be with us much longer, I don't think. He's too inconsistent when he does play. He just doesn't seem to have that goal scoring ability. 24 appearances for us this season, 2 goals. Pretty shocking, really, across the board. Just pretty damn bad. Jacob Poulsen, he really stepped into the fold when Olsen went out injured, and he's done a solid job. He's obviously not quite the same quality of player, and he is 32 years old. But he's got that experience, and that's kind of where it helps. He's got that shoots from distance as well. When his long shots are at 14, it certainly doesn't help. It doesn't harm him to have that. Still got a few stats that have gone up this year, though. Martin Pusic, what can we say about Martin? He's done okay for us this year, scored 15 times for us, which is pretty damn impressive for a guy that just doesn't seem to quite get in the team when we play one striker. But now that we've got that AMC role available, he will certainly be able to slot in there at times as well. Certainly off the bench, there's a lot of positions I can put him into, and he does have that comes deep to get the ball too, which could come in very handy in that Trek role, I think. Andre Römer, as much as his star rating might not suggest much about him, I've really enjoyed his work this year, and he's probably been the better fullback on the side. He's created a lot of assists, or it certainly feels like it. 6 in the league, 2 in the cup. That's not bad for a fullback. It's not quite Javi Manquillo level, but it's decent, and he's still relatively young, though it does seem like he might be maxing his potential fairly soon. Daniel Royer, we've got another Austrian. He's a decent player, but again, he's sort of one of those players that is always going to be a backup to the likes of Sisto and Sobby, but he will get plenty of game time still. Played 25 times this year and did okay, got 6 assists as well, so certainly during those early stages of the league, he was right up there in terms of that. Harmeet Singh, now he's got a lot of stats going down, but that might just be because he's recently played, so we can kind of read into that a little bit less. But he's actually only got 13 on the long shots, but he does have that shoots from power, shoots with distance, shoots from distance, shoots with power. He's a good player. He's got some decent PPMs, but I wish the long shots were a little bit better in terms of his actual stat for them, because then he might be able to score a few more of them. And after all, he is a defensive midfielder by trade, which sort of makes you wonder why they need those long shot stats, but that's just how it is, I suppose. Pione Sisto, what a man. He's got that shoots from distance as well. Tries to play his way out of trouble, which is a bit of a worry at times, but in a possession tactic it might be okay. He's got that cuts inside from left wing. I might try and get him a cuts inside from right wing as well if he's going to play as an inside forward for us, which is kind of where we're going to be using him. But this season comes in, scored 8 goals for us. He's got some assists as well. Scored 6 goals in the league, got 8 assists as well. Very, very good. Very, very pleased with him. Ramadan Sobhi, again, he's had a very, very good season for us as well. 3 goals, 6 assists, solid player, still only 18, still has plenty of room to improve, and he's got some decent mental stats already, you know, flair and determination nice and high, and some solid physicals, though his balance is a little bit lacking. Those killer balls, perhaps, not sure, but at least he's got some PPMs to begin with. Tim Sparv, now that he's got his new contract, he is settling in here very, very nicely. He's probably the best defensive mid that we've got, and has some really, really solid technical stats. Dribbling and finishing a little bit lacking, but that's not really what we want from him. He's got that shoots with power and comes deep to get the ball, which is impressive because he's already a pretty damn deep player. So I love me a bit of Timmy. Marcus Urenia probably will get moved on in the summer just so he could cash in and get a bit of money from him, because I just don't think he's ever going to be able to forge himself a place in this team, particularly not as the youngsters coming through, as he's not exactly the youngest himself. So I feel like he might be one that will move on in the summer if we can. Mikkel Andersen is a player that, well, he started off the season as our main goalkeeper, but Darlene finally came back and took the spot from him once he was back from fitness. But he did a decent job. Only 3 clean sheets though, is what I would say. Although that's Champions League games. So actually, 7 clean sheets in 18 matches. It's not the worst, but we could certainly do better in that position. Petter Anderson, of course, he's very, very close to being fit again after missing the entire season. So part of me might be tempted to try and get him on a contract just so we've got him next year, but I don't know. It might only have to be a 1-year extension, perhaps. Patrick Bangard, again, young, talented, and he will certainly be one of our starting centre-backs for quite some time in this save, I sense, until some amazing regens hopefully come through and start to try and take those positions off of him, but he'll certainly be useful for tutoring as well at those points. Johan Darlene, of course, fantastic goalkeeper, done a really solid job for us, I think. 7 clean sheets in 15 games, only conceded 11 goals. We've definitely stepped up once we brought him back into the team. Mikkel Julen, really, really like this lad. He's still only 18, showing real potential in this side, and I think that, once he got himself into the team a little bit, it was really difficult to get him out over on the left, but he can play in the middle as well. Great inside forward. Maybe we should look to moving on to the inside forwards on the left-hand side as well. Not entirely sure yet, though. Kian Hansen, really, really solid defender. He's done a lot for us this year, played a lot of games, and scored a couple of goals as well, which is nice. Very versatile, though, can play in many positions, and that's another one of the reasons why I like the guy. So I thought we'd take a little look at the team stats before we start looking into the individual player stats, and as you can see for possession, in the league, 50. So we're sort of there, but I'd like to see that go up a little bit more next year, that's for sure. Penalties we should be nice and high on. We've scored 5 out of 6, so that's not too bad. We've scored the most penalties out of any team, so we'll take that. Headers 1 was sort of very mid-table on that one, but if you actually look at the number of 1 in terms of a ratio, very, very good, higher than anyone else, and that's pleasing because it shows we're winning a lot of these duels in the air, which is not actually having that many duels to win, I guess is the way you'd look at it. Let's see, what else can we get? Cross completion, Copenhagen dominate that with 21, but we're still in 4th with 16. I'd like to see that push up, but I think as we get better players on the wing and in fullback positions, that's something that will hopefully improve. But 21 is really, really high, but we're still up there in the sort of top 4 with those types of teams, and that's the key thing. Goals from corners, we've scored 8 times from corners this season, and that is showing you just how important our set piece plays are. We really are lethal from them. That's like, 10-15% of our goals have come from corners, and that really is saying something. Direct free kick goals, again, they're down on... I thought we'd score one, but I think that might have been in the cup, actually, when Sisto scored that 1 free kick. But as you can see, only 5 free kicks scored the entire season. Still not great, but what can you do? We've actually scored the most goals from free kicks as well, which is interesting, but I feel like we probably conceded the most too. We've scored 9, so that's good to see that set pieces really are working out for us nicely. Pass completion, very, very high. 74, nicely up there with the big size in the league. But it's interesting to see that Nordsjælland actually had a decent pass completion despite their woeful season. Shots on target ratio is a little low, and I want to sort of bring that up to scratch a little bit next year. And I think that's one of the areas that we're looking to improve on, is getting more shots on target on average, so we're not wasting so many of them. But we did hit the target more than anyone else, and a lot more than anyone else. I mean, look at that. Like 40 odd, nearly 50 more shots on target than anyone else. Incredible. We've also drawn an awful lot of fouls this year, which I guess kind of comes with the territory of the sort of tactic we play, though. Right up there on dribbles per game as well. It does look like a sort of two-horse race at the moment, but as they get stronger, hopefully we will as well, and that means they'll be able to function more on a European basis. Goals conceded, we had the third best, joint third, but the sort of top four sort of stood out amongst everybody else, and I want to try and get that one next year. We want to make sure we concede the least goals, and I think with this new sort of tactical style, we should be able to do that, conceding a lot less goals than we were before. Interestingly, we only conceded 1 goal from corners this season, which is quite impressive. And I remember the goal. I think it was Jurgensen of Copenhagen that scored it, although that might have been in the cup as well. So that's not too bad. So as you can see, we conceded 8 goals from indirect free kicks, which is the telling stat for me. If we can get that down to 2 or 3, things will be a hell of a lot better. And that's something we're going to work on over the summer, because that could save us 5 or 6 goals a season and really make a huge difference to our points tally, I'd sense. Clean sheets were right up there, only 3 less than Copenhagen. Not as foully as I've been on previous saves. This tactic seems to be a little bit less aggressive, which is quite... Unfortunately, one area where I'm a little bit worried is that we're 11th on tackles won ratio, which is surprising. I'd like to see that grow a little bit higher. Admittedly, there's not a lot in it between top and bottom, but I would like to see us much, much higher on that one. That's a worry. If you look at salaries per annum, literally Copenhagen are spending nearly twice as much as we are. So that's saying something. Look at the other teams. I mean, look, Viborg barely spending anything. So we're definitely cut above the rest of the league, but we're actually still at quite a deficit to a better side, and we're really going to have to try and bridge that gap over the next couple of seasons. So really, they should be winning the league at these points. Looking at average rating, Jakob Poulsen is right up there, but it was Domagoj or Goy, yeah, Pavicic of AGF that got the best average rating overall. A really good young player, but he is 22, so we can't go looking after players like that. Larson up there as well from Brøndby. Some good players from Randers. Kadlec did a decent job. You'll notice that obviously Olsen isn't listed here anymore. I think that's because he just didn't play enough games overall. If you look at minutes per goal, though, Kadlec is actually the top, and if he just scored in that final game, I think that means he would have won the Golden Boot, but he didn't. But that's the main thing. The fact that he's got the best minutes per goal ratio of anyone else. It's sort of, you know, what's that, like a goal every 2 hours, basically, just over that, which is not too bad, I'd like to say. Shots on target ratio, Sobby's actually doing quite well, so is Sisto. Julian, but you'll notice that Kadlec's nowhere near that one, which is a shame. Sisto actually climbed right up high on the old assist league towards the end of the season. I feel like if the season's a full one, he probably does get himself the old win on that one, to be honest. But then Mohamed fella managed to win it for Esbjerg. On key passes, I'd like to see us have more players challenging for the top of that, but Poulsen and Kadlec doing a decent job, at least getting in the sort of top 10. But Fisker looks to have done a really solid job with 131 key passes. Pass completion, interestingly, is both of our goalkeepers, which is really strange to see that both of our goalkeepers have the best pass completion in the league, but I guess that shows you how teams aren't closing them down very much. Cross completion ratio is Jakob Poulsen with 33%. I don't know how many crosses that's out of, but it's obviously enough to get him on this list, which is very, very surprising. Julian not doing too bad at 17, but Poulsen's really sort of not letting the side down, almost the exact opposite. He's keeping the average up. Kadlec runs offside a hell of a lot, as you can see here. It's something we really need to maybe train him to beat the offside trap with a PPM or something, maybe. That's the only thing I can think of there. As for key tackles, we're fairly low with Patrick Bangard, but I sense that's just because, of course, we're generally on the front foot, so that many key tackles are not really that necessary. As for key headers, Bangard is right up there as well, but Mads Justesen from Hobro, who we, of course, played against a few games ago, who I did notice was pretty damn solid, but that is outrageous. He's really stepping up for his team. Unfortunately, I think he's probably done enough to... No, they still went down, didn't they? Headers won ratio, Bangard, 88%. That is Brian Gomez-esque. And in the first season for a 22-year-old, if he can just get that better and better, I'd be very, very pleased with him. So we're going to take a look at the goalkeeper stats now, the real sort of meat and gravy of these videos. This one might be slightly longer because we had to do a squad report in this one as well, just because I thought we'd bundle that all into one video. That way, if people are interested in that, they just have to watch one video rather than more than one. Johan Dahlin then. So let's take a little look at his stats in the games that he's played as a goalkeeper for us. So 77%. That's really solid for me. I like a 77%. He's got decent pass completion as well, which is astonishingly good. He's holding more saves than he's parrying, which is again good. I'd much rather have that. But we've actually got a second goalkeeper to compare him to. So we just look at those stats: 77% there and 18 and 24 there. Now, obviously, that could differ because of the number of games, but we can still work out kind of averages from that. So looking at the stats here, 75% from Mikael Andersen, and again, he's still held more than he's parried, which is good, but his save percentage was just a tiny little bit less, and his pass completion, again, just a tiny little bit less, which suggests to me that Dahlin is definitely our number one goalkeeper, but Mikael Andersen is a very, very apt backup for him. Now, centre-backs this year, we're mainly looking at Hansen, Bangard, and to a lesser extent Sparv. It's mainly Hansen and Bangard that are the ones that we're really looking at here. So with that in mind, what we're looking for here is obviously these things here. Tackle ratio, 88% for Hansen is fairly solid actually. Bangard's is down at 82. So I'd like to see him get that a little bit more. It almost feels like Bangard is the one that wins the ball in the air and Hansen wins the ball on the floor, which actually makes for quite a nice partnership at times. If I had to guess, I'd say their headers won ratio is probably the almost reverse of that. Looking at key tackles, again, Bangard has actually made more of those though, despite not winning as many tackles as a sort of average in terms of the ratio. He certainly makes more last-ditch stuff, I sense, which means he's obviously running in behind, but he has made more mistakes leading to goals as well, despite playing less minutes than Kian Hansen, but we can put that down to inexperience as well. As for his pass completion, they're both sort of down in the 60s, and I guess that kind of makes sense. Sparv should be high because he's played in midfield as well. I'd like to see that maybe a little bit higher than that, at least up to the 70s, probably because they're hitting it long at times, which doesn't help with them, I wouldn't have thought. Average rating, Bangard does have Hansen beat on that one, though. He's really had a very, very solid first season, I've got to say, and this is what I was expecting here. Headers won, you'll see Bangard 89% headers won, whereas Larsen is down on Hansen is down on 76. So he's not the best in the air, Hansen, but he's fantastic on those ground balls. And those two make a really nice partnership, I think, with one being fantastic in the air, but less so on the ground, and the other one can cover him behind and make fantastic tackles. That seems to be a good little comparison so far. And you can see from the number of key headers that he's won, 156 overall, which is superb. Key passes, again, not that important for my defenders to be playing them, but Kian Hansen definitely does seem to have an eye for a pass, which I guess would come into the play, given that he probably is better with his stuff on the ground. He has made a few more mistakes, though, but he has played more fixtures, so I guess that kind of makes sense. As for interceptions, again, both of them doing a solid job there, both up above 500, in fact, well above 500, so that is very, very good. Now, looking at fullbacks, we're really just looking at Römer and Novak here. They're the ones that have played basically as fullbacks this year. We've rarely had much rotation. This will of course change over the next couple of seasons as we have more players to rotate in and out. So what we're looking for here is, again, of course, tackling, which is hugely important. So 71% for Filip Novak. He's much better in the tackle than Römer is. Römer does seem to be more of a Marcelo type of player in that he's very much attack-minded. Not to say that he's not a very good defender, but he does seem to have a real emphasis on his attacking play. As for crosses, and that's kind of key for these guys, Römer has 13 and Novak 11. I want my fullbacks to have better cross ratios than that, really, and that's something we need to look at, ways of doing that. And maybe with this change in style of looking for the overlap, we might be able to allow that a little bit more in the coming seasons, basically. As for key tackles, 13 apiece, but Römer did make 2 mistakes leading to goal as well. Novak didn't make a single one all season, which is odd considering his average rating throughout the year was fairly low in certain games, so I'm guessing he did make some mistakes, potentially more than Römer in the end. Pass completion, Römer doing very nicely on that one again, 78% with his pass completion, not looking too bad at all. Novak is slightly less on that one, but I guess, I don't know, it might be just because of their strike partners. There's all kinds of factors as to why that can be. You know, it's depending on the players they've got around them. Römer, of course, had Pione Sisto, whereas Novak had the inexperienced Mikael Dulan and the sort of, not inefficient, but sometimes inconsistent Daniel Royer. So that kind of makes sense as well. Looking at the, we want average ratings. Take a look at that. As you can see, Römer, again, just that little bit better than Novak throughout the season, but Novak does have his part to play, and Römer is a bit more of a risk when he gets things wrong, it would seem. Headers won, though, Novak, actually 77% headers won, and 75 is not bad for fullbacks. I would accept that any day of the week, that my fullbacks are winning headers that much. I've rarely had players with Wimbledon getting headers that much, I think. Manquillo was sort of the only one that did that. Key headers, Novak, again, certainly wins a lot more key headers. You can definitely see that he's a better defensive player in general. Just because he wins, you know, he's got a better tackles won ratio, he wins more headers. He's definitely more of a defensive type of player. Key passes, that should definitely be Römer. That's much higher on that one, as you can see, because he's just a better attacking player. As for mistakes, Novak again slightly in behind that, which once again leads me to suggest that he's a better defensive player. Passes completed, again, should be slightly less. Interceptions, interestingly, a little bit less. So Römer might have slightly better anticipation, but it is negligible at this point, and he's winning more headers per game. So looking at them both, you can definitely see that Novak is a better defensive player, Römer is definitely better going forward, and that kind of lends itself to the shape we play anyway. Now we're looking at central players this time, which incorporates sort of attacking mids, centre mids, as well as defensive mids. So we're looking at Poulsen, Olsen, Sobby to a certain extent, Singh, Julian, Sparv. There's a lot of players to look at, so we'll just kind of take a little glance at this because there's a lot of them here. Tackles one, you'd expect Sparv to be up there quite decently. Hansen at 88, but again, that's more defensive stuff. Sparv and Singh both above 80. That's what I like to see. The golden spot, I want to see them above 85 ideally, but he's close to it, and that's pretty damn pleasing for the first season in this one, to be honest. Anyone really underperforming in that? Olsen did not win a lot of tackles. That's what I would say. He did seem to shy away from it. So that's something we might, you know, maybe we've got a little bit more grit to us now that he's not in the team, because of the players we've had to bring in that are just better in the tackle, it would seem. Key tackles as well, Spa with 14, which is, again, should be as high as that. Singh made a lot less key tackles, though, but again, he probably played a lot less times in that position. Passing, again, I'd like to see my midfielders with decent passing. Singh up to 76, and I think with the new changes to the tactic, as we get better passing, this should hopefully go up a lot next year, just because of the actual tactic itself, rather than the players. So that will hopefully come into it. Average rating overall, Poulsen and Olsen and Singh all getting really solid ratings. Olsen particularly with his 7.67, a full season, and he'd probably be the best average rating player in the entire division, but he didn't get that luxury, unfortunately. Headers won in that midfield, Spa with 82, really, really good for a defensive mid. He's got decent height as well, which isn't all be-all and end-all with defensive mids, as I've proven with people like Sam Farmer, and Tony Ivancic wasn't particularly tall either, I don't think. You know, there are plenty of other stats that can make up for those sort of situations. I never like to look at a player and just discard them because of their height. You know, some of my best central defenders, like what was his name, Robert Gray on Pompey, was pretty damn short, but he was one of the best defenders I had. So that's just how it is. You can sometimes look at other stats that will compensate for a lack of height, like anticipation for one thing. Key passes, Poulsen and Olsen dominating on that one, and that makes perfect sense that they would do, really. Both had really solid seasons. As for mistakes, Spa have made a few, but I guess you're more than likely to see that a little bit. Has anyone really stood out as making very few mistakes? Not particularly. Passes complete. Look at that. Keranen, in the games he's played, has actually spread that ball around very nicely. It does lead me to believe that once he starts to get his talent up a little bit more, he could really be an important player for us. As for interceptions, you'd expect Spa to be up as high as that, and he is over 400. Pretty damn pleased with that in the long run. Headers won for these players. I mean, look at that. Spa winning a lot. Hansen winning loads, but again, not really a defensive midfield player. He just can play there. Now, mainly here, we're looking at the likes of Sobby, we're looking at Royer, Julen, Sisto. Those are kind of the ones that we really want to... And Pusic, of course. So what we want to look at here, tackles, not really that important for my wide men. It's interesting to see if any of them are tracking back a little bit. Sisto 58, Royer 58. They're all around the sort of 50 to 58 kind of level, which is fine. Cross completion, though, I'm interested in. So who do we get there? Pusic with 22 is good. Julen 16. Royer and Sisto quite low down. Sisto and Sobby. Sisto could really do with improving his assisting type of the game, but he does get assists. He's got 7 this year, so maybe he's just not getting them from crosses, which is fine, as long as he is actually getting them. That's the main thing, really, isn't it? Top goal scorer from these positions, Sisto with 9, Poulsen not really relevant. Julen got 7 as well, appearing at the back post. Solid stats for those guys across the board, I have to say. Pass completion, Julen with 75, Royer 75, Sobby 74, Pusic 73, Sisto 72, all relatively within this. You could throw a blanket over them, and that's kind of what I want from that. Average rating overall, Sisto was the king of that, and really did dwarf any other sort of wide men this season, but I think that's because of his goal record as well. 9 goals, 9 assists, really, really solid. He's just a better player overall, and maybe playing him in a position that sort of suits him in this team is certainly having an effect on that as well, I think. Headers won, not really that bothered about headers won, really, from our wide men, though. It's interesting to note that Sobby and... Yeah, Sobby has 59% headers won, which is vastly more than anyone else there in terms of, well, I mean, not that many more than Julen, but it's certainly noticeable that he has got more. Key passes for the wide men, Sobby with the most on 89, but Julen not that far behind. They're obviously getting a decent amount, but they're not, you know, excelling hugely in that area. Mistakes, obviously we want to make sure they're not making too many mistakes, so who is getting the least mistakes? That would be Pione. Sisto, yes, it would, with 33, but again, it's negligible. It starts to get up as you get to Julen, who I think might be put that down to his inexperience, perhaps. Interceptions, not really that relevant for our wingers, to be honest, and headers 1 per 90 minutes, again, not really that relevant. Now, as for strikers, we're really only looking at Kadlec and Pusic here at this point, because they're the only two that have really played as strikers this year. So really what we're interested in here is passing percentages, scoring, obviously. So goal scorer easily. Kadlec's doing superbly. 29 goals in 47 appearances is decent. Pusic has got a decent return for the amount of games he's played as well. A really solid goals minutes per goal ratio, which we might be able to look at here. Yeah, minutes per goal ratio is almost identical to that of Kadlec. So it means if we put him up there, he in theory would be able to get a decent number of goals as well. It's great having two players with really, really solid ratios in that sense. Pass completion, Kadlec, and again, doing a decent job, 75%. He gets a lot of key passes, and he really does link the play nicely. 11 assists, 4 man of the match awards. But again, as you can see, Pusic, 3 man of the match awards, and he played a lot less games. So he's definitely got that ability in his game, and he really knows how to make a tackle as well, when you look at the differences between the number of tackles made. But overall, Kadlec's definitely a better average rating overall. But when you look at distance covered per 90 minutes, again, Pusic actually covers a substantial amount more. That's over 1 kilometre more per game. But again, once we've got a settled tactic, that will make more sense when we can actually look at it a bit deeper. Looking at headers won, Onuachu, of course, because he's a target man, will have won more there, and Pusic has won more in the air. Cadlet's not solid in the air at all, only 35% headers won, which means lumping the ball up to him is basically a fruitless opportunity for us, which is why I think having that trek in those attacking systems is going to be key, because it means we don't have to lump it up. We can play it into him, into the feet, he can turn and still have a player beyond him, and that's what I really like to see. Headers won, Pusic obviously has a better ratio because Kadlec just doesn't win that many headers, but look at those key passes, 171 key passes. He's basically played very, very well this season, incredibly good. Pusic made a lot more mistakes on average as well when you actually look at it. 27 mistakes to 25 is quite a stark difference. It really, really is. Pusic again winning more headers, but gets a lot less shots per 90 minutes as well. Completes a few more passes, but that is that. And that's going to bring this episode to an end. It should be in around about 25 minutes, I think. So again, you know, this is not the sort of thing for everyone, I know that, but I thought I'd just make sure that you guys that do like this sort of stuff still get these videos, as well as the slightly shorter normal videos with the more snappy stuff. So I will join you guys in the next episode, where we'll be going over, of course, transfers, as well as making some transfers in it and playing our first game of the season. So if you have enjoyed this, do drop a like on the video. That would be superb, just to let me know that you want to see me keep doing these, and I will join you guys in the next episode for some more goodies. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.